The mansion looked grand from the outside, but inside, one corner of the living room carried a heartbreaking sight. A little girl, barely 5 years old, was sitting on the cold marble floor. Her tiny hands clutched an old cloth, scrubbing the ground as tears streamed down her cheeks. The child's name was Emily, and though her father was a millionaire businessman, her life inside this house felt no less than a punishment. Standing tall above her was Isabella, Emily's stepmother. Dressed in a stunning red gown that glistened in the soft lights, she looked elegant, beautiful, and confident, but her eyes carried no mercy. With an angry face, she shouted at the child, her voice echoing through the room. "Do it properly. Clean the floor again. You are so useless." Emily flinched at every harsh word. She was too young to understand why the woman, who was supposed to be her new mother, treated her this way. All she knew was that before Isabella came, life was different. She faintly remembered her real mother's gentle touch, her soft lullabies, and her warm hugs. But fate had been cruel. Emily's mother had passed away when Emily was only 3 years old. After her mother's death, Emily's father, Mr. Richard Hamilton, had fallen into depression. He was a hard-working millionaire businessman, always busy with meetings and contracts, but losing his wife had broken him. In his loneliness, he remarried, hoping to give Emily a new mother and himself a companion. That's when Isabella entered their lives. But Isabella was not the kind woman Richard thought she was. In front of him, she acted sweet, caring, and sophisticated. But behind his back, she unleashed her cruelty on the little girl. She hated Emily, not because Emily had done anything wrong, but because she reminded Isabella of Richard's first wife. Jealousy and bitterness burned inside her heart. At this moment, Emily's small sobs filled the room. She rubbed the floor harder, trying to please her stepmother, but her tea. The silence inside the mansion grew heavy after Richard's thunderous words. The ticking of the antique clock on the wall was the only sound that dared to exist. Isabella's lips trembled. She wasn't used to this tone from her husband. Until now, Richard had always been gentle with her, trusting her without question. But tonight, the trust was cracking. "Richard, darling, please listen to me," Isabella whispered, trying to control her. "Breathing. You're overreacting. Emily was only doing a small chore, nothing harmful. Every child should learn." "Learn what?" Richard snapped, his voice sharp like a knife. "Learn to cry while scrubbing the floor. Learn to fear her own mother? Is that what you call parenting?" Emily clung tighter to her father's leg, her small body still trembling. She peeked up at Isabella with wide, fearful eyes, then quickly buried her face against Richard's coat again. The sight crushed Richard's heart. He gently stroked his daughter's hair, whispering, "It's all right, sweetheart. Daddy's here now." For the first time in weeks, Emily felt safe. But Isabella's mask of calmness began to slip. Her eyes narrowed, her hands clenched at her sides. "You don't understand, Richard. This girl." Richard raised his hand, silencing her instantly. His eyes blazed with fury. "Don't you dare call her this girl. Her name is Emily. She is my daughter. The daughter of the woman I loved before you. And if you think you can mistreat her under my roof, you are very wrong." Emily's heart skipped. She had never heard her father speak with such strength. For so long, she had been too scared to tell him the truth, afraid that maybe he wouldn't believe her. But now, with his anger directed at Isabella, courage sparked inside her tiny chest. She tugged gently at his sleeve. "Daddy." Her voice was barely a whisper. Richard immediately knelt down to meet her eye level. "Yes, sweetheart? Tell me." Tears filled Emily's eyes. She sniffled and said in a trembling voice. The silence inside the mansion was heavy. Richard froze near the doorway, his briefcase still in his hand, as he watched his wife scolding Emily. The little girl was kneeling on the cold floor, her tiny hands scrubbing with tears rolling down her cheeks. "Papa, I didn't do anything wrong. I was just playing," Emily whispered through sobs. Richard's heart clenched. For a moment, anger surged through him, but before he could speak, Isabella turned sharply toward him. "You came early? Richard, you're misunderstanding everything. I was only teaching Emily discipline. She must learn how to behave in this house. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed fear. Richard's gaze shifted from his wife to his daughter. The marks of suffering on Emily's small face told him the truth. At that moment, the old housemaid entered quietly. She lowered her head but spoke bravely. "Sir, this is not the first time. Madam always punishes the child like this. Sometimes she doesn't give her food. Sometimes she locks her in the room all night." Richard's blood boiled. He dropped his briefcase to the floor, the sound echoing like thunder in the hall. "Enough, Isabella. She is my daughter, not your servant. If you dare to raise your voice or hand against her again, I swear this marriage will end right here, right now." Isabella's lips trembled, but her pride didn't allow her to bow. Still, the fear in her eyes showed she knew Richard wasn't bluffing this time. Isabella tried to mask her fear with a bitter smile. "Richard, you're overreacting. She's just a child. Children exaggerate, and servants love to gossip. You can't believe everything you hear." But Emily clung tightly to her father's leg, sobbing harder. "Papa, please don't leave me with her again. She doesn't like me. She says I'm not her real daughter." Richard's chest tightened. The words pierced his soul like a blade. He lifted Emily gently into his arms, brushing the dust from her small hands. "You will never have to beg for love in your own home," he whispered to her. Then his eyes met Isabella's again, cold, sharp, and unyielding. "You married me knowing I had a daughter. You promised to care for her as your own. Instead, you've treated her with cruelty. Tell me, Isabella, what kind of woman torments a child who has already lost her mother?" For the first time, Isabella's confident posture faltered. I only wanted her to learn manners. She disrespects me." Richard's voice thundered through the hall. "She's 5 years old. She needs kindness, not punishment." The maid, emboldened by Richard's anger, stepped forward. "Sir, forgive me for speaking, but Emily is always polite. It is Madam who looks at her with hatred." Isabella's face turned red with humiliation. She clenched her fists, unable to find words. Richard placed Emily down gently and said, "From now on, I will see everything with my own eyes. One more mistake, Isabella, and this house will no longer be yours." Emily buried her face in his chest, finally feeling safe for the first time in months. The following days were different. Richard stayed home longer, watching silently from the shadows. He saw how Emily brightened whenever he was near, and how quickly her joy faded when Isabella's sharp eyes turned on her. One afternoon, Richard returned early again. This time, Isabella didn't notice him standing by the door. She was gripping Emily's arm tightly, hissing in anger, "You little brat. If you don't clean faster, I'll..." She froze when she heard his voice. "You'll what, Isabella?" Richard's glare was like fire. He stepped forward, pried Emily free, and held her close. "I gave you my trust, my wealth, my name, but you've proven unworthy of them all." Isabella's face drained of color. "You can't mean..." "I do," Richard cut her off. "Pack your things. You will not raise a hand or a voice against my daughter ever again. This house belongs to her future, not your cruelty." The maid gasped, tears of relief welling in her eyes. Emily hugged her father's neck, whispering softly, "Thank you, Papa." Richard kissed his daughter's forehead and looked down at her with unshakable resolve. "You will never be alone again. From now on, you will know only love." As Isabella was led out of the grand mansion, her furious footsteps echoing behind her, the heavy darkness lifted from the home. Emily smiled for the first time in months, her small hand wrapped around her father's, and in that moment, Richard silently vowed that no wealth, no woman, and no power would ever come before his daughter's happiness again.